Good morning, Calvalyn. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm so good. Thank you.
Good, good. Tell us, where in the world are you?
Oh, I am in a little town called Zionsville in Indiana. So the nearest like big city is Indianapolis.
Okay, nice. So today I just want to talk about you, just you becoming a trauma-informed coach, just stepping into the coaching world yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you were prior to becoming a trauma-informed coach.
Yeah, so I always tell people that my career in the mental health slash trauma informed space, I came about it the scenic route. So when I graduated high school at 17, I was going to be a psychologist. Didn't know what that meant. Never been to a psychologist, but was just really interested in like how people thought and how people acted and that kind of thing. But I took a very scenic tour, and then came back to school counseling, which is kind of where I was transitioning from when I found your program. Was stepping into my business, working with schools and youth serving organizations, and I knew about trauma. I had kind of learned some therapeutic trauma techniques, but I felt like there was something missing. So, a lot of times the therapeutic techniques are really geared at people feeling better, which is great, but not necessarily people doing better, which is the part that I really wanted to focus on. And I got a little bit of both from the program. So, very excited about that.
Yeah. So what was it that created the shift for you then? When you think back, I know when I think about my journey, same as you, was a very long, convoluted way of getting here to where I feel like we should be. Um,
Mhm.
but what was the shift for you?
It's one of those things. I think it's kind of the gift of the pandemic is part of it, right? Because I think that's why you guys have kind of made that shift to doing more online.
Hmm.
And for me, that was probably the first time in my business where I had stepped away from for a long time, I did my business kind of on the side and I had a like full-time job or a part-time job. And so I had just had this shift where I was able to be in my business full time and have it like actually, pay me a salary, which was great. But knew that I needed to have a little bit more oomph behind me. So I started looking for a program that was certified so that I knew I was going to be getting high quality work. I knew enough about trauma to know I didn't want some fluff. I really wanted it to be substantial. So I was very specific in my critiques of what I saw online, but was super drawn to the program. And because you guys were online at that point, and I had done enough research, and your names just kept kind of coming up, coming up, coming up, as I was looking around, and then I had to decide was I willing to make an investment, and to that point, it was probably the most substantial investment I really made in my business, right? But and we think a lot of times about like, oh, if I'm going to college, that's my daughter just got her scholarship letters and it's like 25,000 for this and 35,000 for that. And you like, oh, no big deal. That's what you pay for college. But when it's investing in your business, there's not necessarily a guarantee of a return. So for me, the investment was really a big deal of saying like, yes, I trust myself to take this information and go out in the world and not only do good work with it, but have it return on the investment for me. So it was really kind of the perfect, I hate to say storm, but the perfect storm of everything kind of lining up at the right time.
Yeah.
Um, and I absolutely wouldn't have had it any other way.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Isn't it amazing how we are happy to invest in our children and give them 25,000 or $30,000 to a university
Absolutely.
or college or
Absolutely.
that. But boy, oh boy, when it comes to ourselves, we really kind of sit back. And then, and yeah, I think it's a good point that's taken. And we have a difficult time, I think, as nurturers
Hmm.
to say that we are worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's from a trauma-informed perspective, that can sometimes happen where you kind of, I definitely had done smaller investments in things, but there was this like barrier of me saying like, do I trust that this, that I can do with this what needs to be done, that it'll produce what it needs to produce. And so it was really a healing part for me. Like it was really part of a healing journey for me as well.
Yeah, nice. I love your saying behind you in that too. A good coach can change a game, but a great coach can change a life.
When I found that, I'm like, I don't care. This is coming home with me. It was not on my shopping list when I found it at all. But like, it was
I've
made for
never
me.
seen that before.
Yeah, it was made
So,
for me.
okay, tell us a little bit about your clientele.
Yeah, so I have kind of two distinct clienteles, and I really enjoy being in both worlds. So the part of the business that I had even before coming to Moving the Human Spirit was working with schools and youth serving organizations. So I specifically focus on helping schools, youth serving nonprofits really support the holistic well-being of their staff, which is a really unique position because very often when we think about trauma informed care, particularly with students, we focus on the trauma of the students. And so I come alongside and say, you know what? A lot of our teachers and counselors and principals, they have a history of trauma too, and they are experiencing trauma right alongside their students. And so they need support. So that's a big part of the work that I do with the organizations. But I also get to work with individuals. So I love working with individuals, specifically women who are in transition,
Mm,
either a chosen transition or maybe a not so chosen transition, helping them really get firmly planted in their values and not reacting from that fight or flight fear state, but really standing and saying, no, this is where I'm going and this is where I want, and I don't have to live in survival mode. So those are the two kind of streams of my business.
okay, nice, great. So if you were to tell me a little bit about maybe how becoming a trauma-informed coach has maybe impacted your life and the life of your clients. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, I could talk about that for days and days and days. Literally, someone that I'm in a Facebook group with, might have been like a day or two ago, was saying like, "Hey, I think I want to start coaching. What program should I go through?" And I obviously said this program, but I said the truth of the matter is you got to decide what it is that you want to be able to help people do. Everybody kind of thinks like, "Oh, I want to be a coach," but it's not just, "Oh, I want to be a coach," but what frame of reference are you coming from? What outcomes do you want to help people have? So, um, I wouldn't have answered that question the same way before coming to Moving the Human Spirit. I would have said, "Oh, you don't need to be a coach. Like you can just coach just because I'm around people who have a background in mental health." But the techniques and the approach and the positioning of a great, really trained coach, um, I don't think that that's something you can just do. Like you might have like some of those natural kind of talents, but the skills that you get, I think I'm more confident than I ever was. Like I can stand up in any situation and say, yes, I'm a certified trauma informed coach, and this is what that means, and this is what that will help you with. So that level of confidence and knowing, that has definitely been something that I thought I had before, but now I'm like, oh, no, 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 I'm good. I can definitely have this conversation with anyone. And I do have, because I'm in the mental health space, I do have conversations with people who have a lot of different experiences. And I don't ever feel like I'm ill prepared or like they are more prepared than me. My experience, my expertise, and my knowledge, I feel very grounded in that. So that's how it's changed, for me personally. In terms of like, professionally and for my clients, I think the biggest thing is very often when traditional coaches, I'll say, and I'm just basically speaking about people who don't necessarily reference or incorporate trauma informed approaches, there's almost like this idea that the stuff that happened before doesn't matter. Like just focus right now and move forward, and that's absolutely what coaching is about. But you got it, just having that background knowledge, that running kind of like, oh, I wonder if let me get I'm a little bit curious about what's just beneath the surface here and how that might help move that person forward. So I think my clients, most often it feels like a deeper connection, like there's like they feel seen and safe at the same time, which I think is really important for moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and very trauma informed.
Yeah. That's my goal. That's my goal.
Yeah. I always say coaching is a calling.
Hmm.
It's not something that you just wake up one morning and go, oh, I think I'm going to be a coach. I think it's something that is there and it niggles and it niggles and it
Yes,
niggles. And then
yeah,
finally it just pushes you.
absolutely.
If you're not listening, it'll just push you and yeah, and eventually we will have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the good thing about it is, and I think that's really what I loved about this program is that it doesn't, while everybody's getting the same information, the approach made it feel very much like I can make this work for me. I don't
Exactly.
have to, and I think that's in and of itself is trauma informed, right? A lot of times you go through these programs and they're like prescriptive. They really expect you to filter out your personality and filter out your whole authentic self and just kind of stick to this framework. Yes, the framework is there, but use it with who you are so that you can meet your client where they are. And I think that is the important part of it so that it doesn't feel so almost sterile. Yes, we have a framework that we focus on. We've got a checklist, we've got all the things, but it's the flow that just makes sense if
Yeah.
because you're in that right positioning. And I think that is the benefit of really having a great program that honors the individual.
Well, I think it's I mean, as coaches and especially as trauma-informed coaches, we have to show up as our authentic self
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
those are the people that are being drawn to us specifically. And
Absolutely.
your background and my background are completely different from one another. And then we will have two very different niche markets. Or even if we
Mhm.
did have the same niche market, one person might be drawn to myself, whereas the another person might be drawn to you. So it's really important having that space of that authenticity while you have the framework.
Right.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing is, so I made friends in the program, friends that I'm totally an introvert, right? And the friends that I made in the program are not people that have on paper any single thing like me. But it's like when you have two people who really have that true, that they're each bringing their authentic selves, but they have a true connection over like the values of like, hey, this is really important. And so being able to make these connections with people who are literally across the country or around the world, some of them were,
Yep.
um, and having these really great conversations and being able to keep going with people. Like we had, one of the people that is still a friend to this day, she was she had a surrogate at the time we were going through the program. Her baby was delivered. I think she's now almost 4. And I'm like, oh my God, where did the time go? But I distinctly remember being with her while, her surrogate was going into labor. So when you think about like the connections that you make in a program with other people, I think that there's no money that can, quantify the value of that. And it definitely was something that I did not go into the program anticipating, but was a happy bonus.
Yeah, I think a lot of our students, graduates, and that have a very deep connection with one another. And I mean, you know what? I mean, and that's exactly what happened with Brad and I. So
Mm,
we went to school together in 2010, and I was doing, families with gifted and at-risk youth. That was my niche
mm,
market. And Brad's niche market was more working within organizations and with people around stress and chaos management.
got it.
And then it was in 2014 or well, 2013 that we actually came back together because of Tanya that now works with us.
Got it. Got it.
um, Came over from the island, and so a few of us got together just to reconnect again physically.
Huh. Yes.
And then Brad and I did something together, and we had so much fun doing it. It was kind of like, why are we not doing more of this?
Hmm.
And that's how moving the human spirit was evolved.
Yeah. And
So, you
that's
know,
that's a perfect story of how in the right place at the right time with the right intention, magical things can happen. And I think that you got to you got to make yourself available for it, obviously.
Yes.
But that's what's really good about this, that, the type of people that you're able to pull from just so many different walks of life. And I think even different career paths, because we have people who in our cohort that were going the corporate route, and people who were just starting out, and people who were really established, but pulling all those different parts into a cohort really does give you a great, like a very robust experience. And that was something that I definitely enjoyed.
Yeah, good. Nice. Okay. Any words of advice you would give to anybody looking to become a trauma-informed coach?
Oh, let me see. Okay, so I think the advice I would give is that there's no space in your life that can't be made better with the use and the benefit of this lens, right? So definitely it can make your business better. But it can make your personal life better. It can make your relationships better. And the investment that you make is one that may not immediately have a financial return, although it absolutely can, but the dividends will pay forever. I think some of the friendships that I made and the things that I have learned, and even just the confidence that has been gained, I don't think that this will ever stop producing results for me. So any of the short-term concerns, because I wouldn't say it's necessarily an intense program, but it is a program. So that any of those fears or resistance that might be popping up about, can you do it or should you do it? I think pay attention to the outcomes that you're going to get, because that really is what it's been hard to kind of quantify, but those are the things that I think about even years later that still have me referring this program, and talking about it in the way that I do.
Yeah, nice. Well, thank you for joining me today. It's been
Thank
an
you for
absolute
having me.
honor to do this and highlight what you're doing out there in the coaching world. I think it's super important for us to see all these different walks of lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we even have people in our program that didn't ever intend on being a coach, but they were just using those skills. So I think that's the other thing. Like if you're in leadership, if you're want to be a better supervisor, some of these things just make you better. I sure it makes you better a parent, all these different areas. So there's
Yes.
just so many different ways that it can positively impact your life. So
Absolutely. The question I get asked quite a bit, in when we have these when people call in to have
Mhm.
conversations and that with me and they'll say to me, "Well, how successful are your students?"
Yeah.
And I and I always ask them back, "Well, what's your definition of success?"
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because
Perfect coaching question.
yeah. Well, because it's so different,
Absolutely.
I remember, for people, it might be making 100,000 or 50,000
Mhm.
or 200,000, whatever, right? Or it might
Right.
be working in a nonprofit.
Absolutely.
For me, when I became a coach, it was to be able to have better conversations with my family.
Mm,
So that was my definition of success.
right.
And so I always say to people, set the course, let go
Hmm.
of the outcome, and be open to something even better showing up for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more.
And so, yeah. Any parting words of wisdom?
No, just make the investment in yourself. That's what I would just say is you're worth the investment.
Nice. Well, thank you again, and we really appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye-bye.